you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today is going to be the update to the Off Balance Templar, the Magicka for the Elsweyr Chapter. Now this has been used quite a lot in the past, it's had many updates and it's still gone very strong. It's got a high single target, not the highest, but high single target with balanced really nice AoE alongside its main purpose, which is of course to provide as much off balance and minor vulnerability as possible with minimal effort. Everything you need is in one tidy package: sustain, survivability and damage output, and buffing all at the same time. And of course you don't have to have trial gear if you don't want to. There are some options, but we'll get to that when we get to the gear. Now first of all, we're going to go into the stats. We are sitting on a nice comfy 39.2k max magic, 20k max health, which is massive. We're on 863 recovery with 49.7% crit. That will go up in trials, of course, if you have a sorcerer with minor prophecy and such. And of course we are on 14k resist alongside 9.6. That will actually go up if you use a resistance buff, which we will get to. We have 64 points into max Magicka. We are using the Shadow Munderstone. We're using Double Bloody Mara, which basically gives you a massive amount of max magic and max health. Now this got a little bit buffed because of our stat increases recently, and instead of using the flat stuff here, which is max health, max magic, of course, this is actually quite a bit higher. So you've got more health and a bit more magic as well. But if you can't afford this or you don't have access to it, then of course you can just use the flat stuff here. You can use recovery food if you really want to, but you honestly don't need to. But if you choose to, again, that's your choice. But you will lose max mag and max health, so your damage and survivability will go down a bit, but you can spam a bit more. We are also a stage 4 vampire. So if you do use this food, it will remove one stage of vampirism every time you use it. So if you go into the negatives and you go to stages you don't want, just spam a vampire ability 12 times in a row. Every single one of them will take off 30 minutes of the 6-hour timer. Then it'll put you back to the stage you want. So just be aware of that when using this food. Now I'm going to explain the skills in detail. If you're not familiar with these, of course you're going to learn a hell of a lot. If you are already familiar, then of course be my guest, you're welcome to skip. But if you do skip and then you start asking questions in the comment section below that have already been answered, I won't answer them because it's already been done. So you skip at your own risk. Here we go. So Purifying Light is on our front bar. It's the first ability we have actually, and that is in the Dawn's Wrath skill line. Third ability to unlock, called Backlash, morph it to Purifying Light. The other morph of this applies Minor Fracture and Minor Breach. We're not using that. We're using this one for the damage output for us, and of course the heal, which is really handy. So what you do basically is you put it on the target here. Ignore the Palpatine moment. Now, when that pops, it will do damage. It does damage initially, and then it does damage obviously when it pops, and it lasts 6 seconds. But you'll notice there's a heal on the ground after it's finished. For 6 seconds after it's finished, you will actually put down a heal close to the target or surrounding it, healing everyone in the range of it every 2 seconds. And it's really strong. But the key focus of this particular ability, apart from that heal, which is really nice for the melee guys, especially us because we're up close, but this is to rack up damage. Now, as you saw when it popped, it was a really low amount. But what this does is this actually absorbs damage. Although the target is affected by it, it absorbs damage as well, up to 20% over 6 seconds. And when it's hit its maximum, when the 6 seconds is over, it will burst. Now, there is a cap at this. As you can see in the tooltip, it says 23,553. Obviously, in trials with buffs and bonuses and traits as well, you can alter that. But it won't go up based on anything other than that. Whatever the tooltip is, whatever your buffs are on, you cannot enhance it. It doesn't crit or anything. That is a maximum amount. The most I've seen out of this is I think about 31, 32 with full trial buffs. But again, once that tooltip has decided what it is, it won't crit. It will just take 20% of all the damage being done and pop and explode. Now, we are going to keep this up in our rotation as much as possible. We will apply it every front bar rotation, so we will have a really good uptime on it. Next up is Rearming Trap. Now this is in the Fighters Guild skill line. You need Fighters Guild 8 to unlock this. Takes a little bit of time, but starts off as Beast Trap, morph it to Rearming Trap. We are in the face of the enemy, so we can put this down very successfully without having to run around the room and panic. So we put it down, and this releases a trap underneath the boss. Now, this does do physical damage, which to us is not that important, although it will contribute a small amount. But the main focus of this is for 6 seconds it does damage, but during that time, while it's active, you will gain minor force, increasing all critical damage that you do. So every crit you do is increased by 10%. Now, when the 6 seconds is over, this will rearm, hence rearming trap, and it will apply for another 6 seconds. So this actually stays up for 12. All you need to do is make sure you cast this once every rotation and keep it under any target. So if there's ads here and you put them under it and then you go and hit something else, you will still get the buff. But you got to make sure obviously it reapplies, so keep it on your main target as much as possible. Next up is Radiant Glory. Now this is a choice. This is our main execute. It is in the Dawn's Wrath skill line. Starts off as Radiant Destruction. It's a 5th ability to unlock, by the way. Morph it to Radiant Glory. Now what this does is this will deal up to an additional 480% extra damage to enemies below 50%, the lower their health is. Now this particular morph is a safety morph, and also a little bit of logic as well. Now this actually heals you for 20% of the damage done. This will do damage over time. So while it's channeling, it'll tick, 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 do damage, 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 and then it'll heal you in each tick it does, depending on the strength of it. The other morph, Radiant Oppression, does do more damage if you have more Magicka left in your bar. It will do up to 20% extra damage depending on the amount you have left. It doesn't mean if you have 40k Magicka it does X amount, and if you have 50k it does more. No, it means how much is left in your bar. So if you do take that morph and you find yourself really low Magicka at execute, you're not benefiting from it. So this would benefit you more because you heal off it and you do a flat amount of damage. The other morph, as already mentioned, will do more damage the more Magicka you have. So if your sustain is really good and you've got really high amount left during execute, that's when you'll then get the extra damage. So it is very situational. You may have burnt out completely and you won't get anything extra out of it. So the choice is yours. You can go with the squishy version, which relies on you having really high sustain, or you can go with this version, which heals you for doing damage and everyone's happy. Up to you. Now, as far as usage is concerned, it says under 50%. When it comes to ad pulls, especially in Trials and Dungeons, sure, 50% or 40%, start hitting them with this, get them down quickly, because everybody else's damage applying to it is going to make them go down quicker, and you're going to escalate in terms of execute damage. But on bosses, don't use this till around 30%, because if you use it between 50 and 40, you're going to get a tiny, tiny increase, and then the lower and lower and lower it goes, the more aggressive it gets. Around the 30% mark is pretty much a sweet spot. Anything higher than that, your main spammable can outperform it. So, speaking of which, our next ability is our main spammable. That is Puncture and Sweep. It's from the Adric Spear skill line. It's the first ability to unlock, and it starts off as Puncturing Strikes, morph it to Puncturing Sweep, not Biting Jabs. That's a stamina morph. This basically stabs with a magic spear multiple times, and it hits enemies in area of effect. That's very important, by the way. Area of effect. But the first target, the one in front of you, will get hit the hardest, and this does magic damage. And also, for doing damage, you will heal for 40% of the damage done. So basically you just imagine this is a target, you stab him and you heal off of every hit, but multiple targets will also all be hit, although he gets hit harder. Every single one that you hit will heal you. Very, very strong indeed. This must be in your rotation. It's really, really powerful. Next up is Inner Light. This is in our Mage's Guild skill line. This doesn't do anything. We leave it on the bar for passives. It's Mage's Guild level 2, I believe, to unlock this. Starts off as Mage Light, morph it to Inner Light. Yes, there are effects to this which make people appear when they're invisible if you're in PvP, but that's not what we use it for. We are using this for the flat bonus that it has. It has a 5% increase to maximum magic for being on our bar, and it gives us Major Prophecy increasing our spell crit rating by 2191, which is 10%. Now, we do have that passive in our potions, but we don't have the 5% max magic in our potions, so we leave this on our bar, and if your potions run out or you don't have anything that you can use at the moment, at least you still get this bonus. Keep this on your bar at all times. Next up is Ice Comet. This is not hugely essential, but this does help you kind of max out your stats. This is only here for passives. Passives we are going to get to. Obviously, this is in the Mage's Guild skill line as well. You need Mage's Guild 10 for this. Starts off as Meteor, morph it to Ice Comet. Now, we only use this if the enemy is almost dead and you don't have enough for your back bar ultimate. That's it. It's the only time you use it. Otherwise, you'll fire this, it will miss crit, and then you wasted loads of ultimate. Always use your back bar ultimate as much as you possibly can. It's absolutely devastating, but this is kind of an emergency. I've got no juice left, quickly kill it. But again, this is on here purely for passives. Now, the passives, like I said, I will get to, and that'll make a bit more sense. Back bar, Harness Magicka. It's in the light armor skill line. You must have 5 pieces of light to be able to use this, and this basically gives you a damage shield. So you activate it, and you can see a purple kind of aura over top of my health bar. That is how much damage I can take, resistance is included, before I actually take any damage in the health. Just note, by the way, this does actually give you Magicka back if you take damage from magic abilities or spell abilities. It absorbs them. But, of course, once the shield's gone, you can't take any more. You have to put it back on again. So if your shield stays with you and you take multiple hits of magic or spell damage or anything like that in a direct, you will actually get magic back for each one hit up to 3 times. Then it will go away. Also note, this is scaled off of max Magicka, so the higher the Magicka you have, the stronger the shield, but it is capped at 40% of your max health. So if you want a stronger shield, and you have high max Magicka, the more health you have, the more beneficial this will be. Failing that, if you just have a really, really low health bar and loads of max Magicka, obviously this is going to be a lot less, because although it scales really high off of magic, it's still capped at a percentage of your health. So just bear that in mind. Next up is our bread and butter skill. This is Blockade of Storms. Now this is in a Destruction Staff skill line. It's called Wall of Elements, but then morph it into Elemental Blockade. The reason it is called Blockade of Storms is because we're using a Lightning Staff. And if you used a different element, it will be called something else. But it's the second ability you unlock. Wall of Elements is how it starts. Elemental Blockade is how you morph it. Obviously, there are different effects based on each type of staff you use. So, the fire version, if you choose to use fire on the back bar, if you're in an optimized situation, you already have enough off balance, you don't need to contribute to it, which is going to be rare. But if that's already covered, you are welcome to use a flame staff. If not, then stick to the build as it is. It's absolutely mental. We actually use a lightning staff on purpose, because concussed enemies will be forced off balance if you put down a lightning wall of elements. Now, concussion is a status effect applied by chance by lightning damage. So if you have enough lightning damage going off, you can have a higher chance to apply concussion. When concussion is active, that applies minor vulnerability, increasing all the damage you and everybody else does to that target by 8%. And while it's concussed, this will knock it off balance. If you're not familiar with what off balance does, off balance makes it so that the enemy can be heavy attacked, of course, and if you do heavy attack it and it's a boss or a normal enemy, you will get double resources back, and your heavy attack will be 70% stronger. Not to mention, of course, in the champion points, there is a champion point bonus or passive in there, which can make all of your damage go up by a further 10%, which we will get to in the champion points section later. But above all, basically, you have to make sure that this wall is down all the time so that you can constantly keep up your minor vulnerability, your concussion, and your off balance. Now, off balance does have not a cooldown as such, but an immunity phase on certain enemies, mostly bosses. So it's 5 seconds worth of off balance, and that's your window of opportunity to heavy attack, and then 15 seconds of no off balance. However, you can still apply minor vulnerability and concussion. After that, you can make it go off balance again. So over 20 seconds, you have a 25% uptime on extra damage output and double resource gain. Now, some adds in the game and some mini bosses and such are not subject to an immunity stage, so they can obviously die a lot faster because of the damage bonus constantly reapplying. But you'll learn that as you go through content, which ones do which. Just remember, of course, you do get taught this in a tutorial. If you heavy attack something that's off balance, and it can be CC'd, stunned, whatever, basically not a boss, you will knock them over, and they will be stunned and knocked on the ground, and then off balance will go away. So bear that in mind for ad pulls. If you want to get the most out of ad pulls, focus the big one that can't be knocked down, and then you can splash damage all of the surrounding targets. That will become clear when we get to the lightning staff passives. Next up is Solar Barrage. Now this is bloody insane. This is in a Dawn's Wrath skill line. It's a second ability you unlock. Starts off as Solar Flare, morph it to Solar Barrage. This is very simple. It lasts for 8 seconds. You apply it, and as you can see, there is a circle around me, pulsing damage. And it's very high damage as well. Really, really strong. Now, while this is active, you will actually increase all of your light attacks by 40%, which is huge. So as long as you're weaving light attacks between skills, which you should be, while this skill is active, every single light attack you do will be increased by 40%. This used to empower once every 2 seconds. Now it doesn't. It's permanent as long as the skill is running. So keep this up all the time. Keep your dots down on the ground and keep your Solar Barrage up. Next up is Mage Light again, or Inner Light, sorry. This is also the same as this, so we've just double barred it, so that we get Major Prophecy on both bars and Max Magic bonus on both bars. But if you are struggling in content and you find yourself being really, really, really squashy, what you can do is you can go to Restoring Light, you can unlock Rune Focus. Now, if you morph this to channeled focus, this will cost magic, and you can put it here. Yes, you'll have less magic on the back bar, but your recovery will be absolutely insane. You have to alter your rotation slightly, though, which will dip a little bit in damage, but your survivability will go up, and let's face it, a dead DPS is no DPS, so if it helps, put it on. This drops a rune on the ground, and gives you major resolve and major ward, increasing your physical and spell resistance by 5280, and that puts us up to 19 and 14.9, which is quite nice. But if you stand in it, it's buffed. You get 22k resist alongside 17.5. Why? Because this is the only skill in the game that has major ward and major resolve that gets buffed. It has a 50% increase to the strength of it for being inside of the rune at the time. So if you want to get really tanky, put this on and take Inner Light off. Failing that, if you're okay with your resistances and survivability, you can take it off and put Inner Light back on again. Also note, by the way, this does increase your recovery. So while it's active, you will actually get 240 magic back once a second for 20 seconds. Now, if you leave the rune, you still keep the bonus. You still keep the resistances. But if you stay in it, you get the extra resistances. And there's also another passive there, but we'll go over that in a bit. For the most part, keep Inner Light on. If you are struggling, again, that is a choice. Next up is, of course, Blazing Spear, which I think you saw a moment ago. This is in the Adric Spear skill line. It's a 4th ability to unlock. Starts off as Spear Shards, morph it to Blazing Spear. Now this again is another ground dot, just like Wall of Elements, except this is a placed one rather than one of those. So you actually have to aim it and fire it. This is a damage over time ability, so don't spam it. It does initial damage, of course, but it does damage every 1 second for 8 seconds. And anyone who isn't on cooldown and who hasn't picked up a bubble, because they're on the same cooldown, that picks this up with a synergy will gain back 3960 Magicka or Stamina, whichever one of the two is highest. So while you're inside your rotations, keeping your dots down and spamming stuff, anyone inside this circle here can pick that up and get resources back. So you are actually helping somebody else sustain. It's very, very helpful. But it's also really, really strong as far as damage is concerned. There's a really nice passive for this skill and Puncture and Sweeps that stack up together to do a lot more damage as well. But we're going to come to that. Thunderous Rage. Now this is the ultimate. You should be using it all times. Unless it's an emergency situation, you only have enough for this and it's almost dead. Only fire this if you've got nothing else left. Thunderous Rage, however, you need to fire all the time if you can help it. Starts off as Elemental Storm, morph it to Elemental Rage. You need level 50 of the Destruction Staff skill line to be able to unlock it. And this puts a massive, massive thunderstorm down on the ground and annihilates everything in the area of effect. Normally lasts 7 seconds, but because we have a Lightning Staff on, this lasts 9 seconds. The effect from Lightning is to have an increased 2 seconds duration. Now, Fire Rage increases the damage by 10%. So if you do have a Flame Staff instead, because your group's got lots of off balance already, which is rare, but maybe they do, then of course you can use a Flame Staff and that will be slightly stronger. But for the most part, longer duration, more shock damage, meaning more concussion, more minor vulnerability, and more chance to proc off balance. Because yes, of course, the ultimate as well can proc minor vulnerability, which means you can off balance with your Lightning Wall, in between stabbing everything to death. It's very, very powerful. Definitely use that ultimate as much as you possibly can. Next up is passives, actually. We're already there. So, we're going to start off with Adric Spear. Piercing Spear is really important. This increases your critical damage by 10%. Note, of course, we have Beast Trap, which also already has a 10% crit damage bonus. This is our passive bonus. Now, you must have an Adric Spear ability slotted for this. We've got one on this bar. We've got one on this bar. So we're covered. Both bars, we've got an increase to our critical damage. You gain minor protection for 3 seconds, reducing all damage taken by 8%. Remember, we're really tanky if we use our resistance buff. We heal from our stabs, but look at that little buff timer there, the yellow one with the shoulder in it. That is minor protection. Now, I haven't got to the rotation yet, but we do use a spear on the back bar, the Blazing Spear, and we do use Puncture and Sweeps twice on the front bar. So, if I fire this, 1, 2, swap bars, spear, come back again, you can see I have 100% uptime on 8% damage mitigation. The rotation is slightly longer than that, of course, but essentially that's what you're looking at. You can have that buff up all the time and it doesn't require any skills to put it on. You just have to keep doing what you're doing. It's a passive. 9 times out of 10 people have to buy a skill to use this. This is built in for us. Burning Light, this is the nutty one, by the way. When you deal damage with an Adric Spear ability, you have a 25% chance to deal 1.6k or 4.7k damage, physical or magic, depending on which one is higher. For us, magic damage is higher, so we get magic damage procs every 0.5 seconds. You have a 25% chance every 0.5 seconds to fire this off. And you have to apply an Adric Spear ability to do so. This is one of them. Every half a second, that could fire. This is also one. Every tick of damage this does, every half a second could fire it. And the two stack. So this could fire one, the spear could fire one, this could fire one, the spear could fire one. It's very, very strong. You're looking for burn and light, of course, on your combat metrics. If you're using that, it's really powerful. It'll be way up there with some of your highest DPS outputs abilities. It's really nice. Get this passive. This increases your weapon damage by 6%, which is irrelevant for us, but we do gain an increase to spell resistance, which is really, really nice. So you do want to get that. Dawn's Wrath, of course, increases the duration of your Sunfire, Eclipse, Solar Flare, and Nova abilities by 2 seconds. If you need to use Solar Prism, aka Nova, this will last 10 seconds instead of 8. And of course, we're using Solar Barrage, so this lasts 8 seconds, not 6. So you do want those. When casting a Dawn's Wrath ability, you generate 3 ultimate. This effect can happen once every 6 seconds. We use this on our front bar, then almost 6 seconds later, we use this on our back bar. Not to mention, of course, Jesus Beam does count as well, so when it comes to execute rotations, you still keep up that passive, and you still gain ultimate nice and quickly. Really helpful. Casting a Dawn's Wrath ability grants minor sorcery to you and your group for 20 seconds, increasing your spell damage by 10%. You and your group all get 10% increased spell damage just for using this, or this, or this. And based on our rotation, that is 100% uptime. It'll never run out. And finally, reduces Magicka, Stamina, and Ultimate costs for all of your abilities by 4%. So this here, the back bar one, and all of our abilities and everything else are all reduced in cost because of this passive. You must get this. It's really helpful. Restore and Light. You don't need all of these. Now, you do have Channel Focus if you want to, so you can benefit from a couple of these. But it's up to you whether you get them or not. This one you won't need. It increases the healing effects from your Restore and Light abilities, which we don't use. So we've got no healing effects from any of these. So you don't need that. While standing in your own Cleansing Ritual, Rune Focus, or Rite of Passage area of effects for up to 4 seconds, or after leaving them, you gain minor mended increase in your healing done. And enemies standing in your Cleansing Ritual, Rune Focus, or Rite of Passage areas have a movement speed reduction. So our rune on the ground, if we stand in it, you'll notice a yellow buff timer. Oops, wrong one. Need to put it on our bar first. Remember, we changed it back. So notice here that you've got the yellow one. You've got kind of a yellowy green effect there, which has no timer on it. It just stays there the whole time. While you're inside here, you get minor mending. So if you are stabbing stuff and healing, it's stronger. If you leave it, then it will run out after a few seconds, and then you'll have to go back in again. If you leave and go back in, leave and go back in, it will just keep resetting. So that is a good passive to get. You can obviously benefit if you're using Rune Focus while standing in it to actually heal more. So your Jesus Beam as well, and of course your Purifying Light. So this here, and your stabs will all be stronger in terms of their heal output. Now this here we don't actually need. We don't use any of these 3 abilities, so ignore this one if you want. And this one, of course, increases your resurrection speed by 20%, which is nuts. We can res really, really fast. We're the fastest res in the game, excluding the ultimate from the Necromancer. If you resurrect allies, you have a chance to return a soul gem as well. So you use a soul gem, but you could get one back. So basically, you didn't use anything. And of course, resurrected allies return with 100% more health. When people come back from death, basically, they don't have a full health bar. This will give them much more when they get up. Now, Destruction Staff skill line. Of course, we're using 2 Destros, one front, one back. You need this passive. We are using a Lightning Staff. Now, shock heavy attacks, which we're going to be utilizing to get our resources back, and of course take advantage of Off Balance, do splash damage. So enemies surrounding will take 100% damage if they're close enough, based on your heavy attack damage alone. So this dude over here, we're going to move to here. Heavy attack. They're both getting hit by it. They both get hit by the heavy. And him, now they both get hit together. Now, that is very important when we get to the gear, and also important towards off balance, because remember, when something's off balance, you have a 70% increase to your heavy attack damage. That 70% increase obviously makes the hit harder, which means the splash damage is harder. In ad pulls or in anything that's got ads involved, even boss fights, because there's normally ads in boss fights as well, things get annihilated if you can time your off balance heavy attacks perfectly. Now, the Flame Staff does a 12% increase to flat damage when you do a heavy attack, but it's just one hit, one fireball, that's it. But the Shock Staff, again, not only does it do damage and tick over time, it splashes and does tick damage to everybody else. So this is an area of effect heavy attack. This obviously increases your ability to ignore resistances of the target. So you ignore 10% of the target's resistances, spell resistance in fact, if you're using Destro abilities. So your Wall of Elements or your light or heavy attacks are all affected by this. Increases your chance to apply Burning Concussion and Chill status effects. This is very important. We're using a Destro Staff here. We're using a Destro Staff here. So both bars have a heightened chance to apply Concussion. Now, if you are using a Sword and Board on your front bar, or a Resto Staff, and a Destro Staff on the back, you have the passives on the back bar. You don't have them on the front. So if you are someone who is not a DPS, for example, and you're supposed to be applying Off Balance, while you're on this bar, you have a heightened chance. If you swap to your front bar, and it hasn't already happened, your chance is down. Just bear that in mind. Your passives require you to be holding the specific weapon for it to count. That is why we have this build, because we don't fail off balance. It's absolutely insane. This, of course, Ancient Knowledge is very important. When equipping a Lightning Staff, you increase all of your area of effect damage by 8%. That includes our splash damage. That includes our Wall of Elements, our Spear, our Stabs. All of those are affected, including our Destro ulti as well. Every single one of those, which are our main spammables and main damage over time. Also this as well, Solar Barrage. Everything that we use, excluding our Execute, is area of effect. So the Lightning Staff boosts the hell out of it. Now, if you do use a Flame Staff instead, which I wouldn't recommend on your front bar, your direct damage, or your single target damage rather, will be increased by 8%. So your area of effect will all go down, and your single target will go up. The only things we really have that are single target is our light attacks, our Purifying Light, and our Jesus Beam. Everything else passively is not single target. It's all area of effect. I've tried multiple different tests, and every single one of them, the Flame Staff has done slightly higher at Execute with the Jesus Beam by about 1k overall from starting the test to finishing the test. But everything else actually went down. So the overall DPS ends up being very, very close. But just consider you will be losing area of effect to gain 1k increase on single target. Whereas you could just keep your damage down by 1k and increase everything else surrounding you by 8%. Makes a big, big difference. So I would highly recommend Lightning Staff on the front bar. Also, don't forget, the heavy attacks are very, very different. So if we show you, for example, here, this is a flame heavy attack. Whoops, got stuck. That is a flame heavy attack. Really long, one shot. So we'll do it here with this guy. Actually, we don't even need to hit him. You saw what it looks like. Big fireball. Maybe it crits, maybe it doesn't. But Lightning Staff, however, every tick it does damage, and then a pop at the end. And splashes. So it's a lot easier to keep up consistent damage and sustain with the Lightning Staff. It's much, much easier to not sit there holding the heavy attack forever. Now, next up, of course, is when you kill an enemy with a Destruction Staff ability, you restore 3600 Magicka with no cooldown. So if anything dies in your Wall of Elements, and it's your kill, or you light attack or heavy attack it to death, you will actually get Magicka back. So that helps with your sustain. Now, light armor, we are using 5 pieces of light. For 5 pieces, we have a reduction to snare effectiveness, so we can actually move a bit quicker if we get snared, and also a reduction to cost for sprint. We increase our mag recovery per piece and reduction to cost per piece as well. We have an increased spell resistance for each piece worn. If you have 5 pieces worn, you also increase your crit rating by 10%, and of course you have an increased spell penetration bonus. It's really, really nice. You've got to get these passives. We're using 1 piece of medium and 1 piece of heavy. So for 1 piece of medium, you want to get a couple of these. You don't want the crit increase because there's no point. You can get this, which increases your stamina recovery and reduces the stamina cost. Because we are using the stamina ability, we're using Beast Trap. So you want to get the cost down and make your recovery up so we can use it more often. That is not important, so you don't need that. This is not important because it needs 5 pieces. And this is because it increases your movement speed and also reduces your dodge roll cost. You will have to dodge roll occasionally to get the cost down. Even if it's not that much, it will still help. Heavy armor, of course, you only need these 3. These 2 here require 5 pieces, and we're not using them. But this gives you a 2% increase to max health per piece worn. This gives you resources back once every 4 seconds if you take damage per piece worn. And this gives you a physical and spell resistance per piece worn. Get these 3, not the rest. We are a stage 4 vampire, of course. You need this one for the recovery passive, which will increase your maximum magic and stam recovery by 10% for being stage 2 or higher. And for being stage 3 or higher, by the way, I'm always a stage 4, force of habit, but just stay out of fire. This reduces the damage you take from all sources, by the way, all damage types, while under 50% health, by up to 33% mitigation. So, the lower your health is, the less damage you take. You get tankier and tankier and tankier. And don't forget, if you are using a resistance buff, you've got really high resists if you utilize it. And of course, you've got minor protection all the time as well, increasing your damage mitigation furthermore by another 8%. And these all stack nicely together. It's really, really powerful. Yes, of course, as far as damage mitigation is concerned, there are multiplicative effects, but it's really, really strong. Now, next up is our Fighter's Guild passive. We do actually need these. Intimidating Presence will reduce the cost of our Beast Trap, so we do want that. This increases the weapon damage for each ability slotted. We don't actually need it, so you can leave this one alone. But we will take this. When you kill an undead Daedra or werewolf, you gain 9 ultimate. Goes without saying, the more ultimate you gain, the more often you can use it, the higher your damage is. Make sure you get this passive. It's insane. Also, your Fighter's Guild abilities do deal an additional 20% extra damage to undead Daedra or werewolves. We are using this. It does do physical damage, so it's not massive, but if you do have the spare point, take this, and this will obviously do a little bit more damage, and it will contribute to maybe like half a K or maybe 1K damage overall. Mage's Guild, you do need these if you can get them. Again, don't panic. If you don't have Ice Comet, you can put Nova on here for the time being just to have it slotted. But if you can get Mage's Guild 10, you will need these passives. You'll need the Ice Comet on your front bar, you'll need Inner Light on your front and back bar if you can. And for doing so, you'll get this passive here, which increases your maximum magic and maximum magic recovery by 2% for each ability slotted. That's 1, which is 2% on top of the 5 you get for the skill. And this is 2, which is another 2% just for being there. These are passive bonuses. You need to get these. Don't use any Sigic Order or Thieves Guild. Undaunted we do. Take the synergies. If you see a synergy on the ground, it's to benefit you. It will do damage. It will heal you. It will shield you. Whatever it does is going to be beneficial. Take it. And for doing so, regardless of what the skill itself does, you will gain back 4% max stamina, max health, and magicka. So it heals you, gives you stand back, and gives you resources to your damage output. So you do want to make sure you take the synergy as much as possible. It'll help with your sustain. Now this, of course, you do need. We're using 1 piece of heavy armor, 1 piece of medium armor, and we are using 5 pieces of light armor. That means for each type we're wearing, we get 2% extra stam, extra mag, and extra health, which is why our health is actually so high. This is ridiculous. But we've got a 6% bonus across the board, basically. So get this as soon as possible. Get your dungeons done, get some achievements. This will happen in no time. We are, of course, a high elf. Now, you can use any race you want. You can use Breton for sustain if you really want to. You can use a Khajiit for the extra crit damage if you want to, or even a Dark Elf for the extra spell damage and max magic. But the High Elf does have a little bit more. And another nice bonus as well. So, when you activate a class ability, you restore 640 magicka or stamina based on whichever is lowest. So, what we need to do is, of course, how do we utilize that? We are using our stamina bar with our Beast Trap, which obviously will eventually run out if we use it too much, because we've got a dodge roll as well. But if you use this ability, you get stam back. Once every 6 seconds, any class ability you use will contribute to that. So our stamina sustain, alongside of our base recovery, which is not massive, is actually really helpful. And of course, when using an ability which has a channel or cast time, you take 5% less damage. So while using your Jesus Beam or using your jabs, you are channeling, which means you have a bonus to damage incoming. You take less. Increases your max magic by 2k, which is the highest max magic bonus in the game, alongside the Breton. And increases your spell damage by 258. That is the same as a Dark Elf, but a Dark Elf has a little bit less magicka. Now, the most important passive in the game, in my opinion, is medicinal use. I've said this hundreds of times. If you've watched my videos before, you already know what to expect. But this increases your potions uptime or duration by 30%. We're using spell pots, which give us major sorcery. Of course, if you've got Inner Light on both bars, you don't need major prophecy, but this is part of the potion anyway. And if you put a resistance buff on your back bar, of course, this covers both bars, so that's a bonus as well, and it gives you major intellect as well. So we've got 20% extra spell damage, 20% extra recovery, and a crit bonus, and it lasts for 47.6 seconds. The cooldown is 45. Obviously, you can keep this up 100% of the time, and you should. If you don't have medicinal use, this will be a lower timer. It'll be around 36 seconds. And then, of course, there'll be gaps in your rotation, in your sustain, and the actual damage output. So make sure you get these as soon as possible. I will put on the website, of course, how to make them. Now we're going to get into the gear. Now, there are choices, and quite a few of them as well. If you do not do any form of trials, do not worry, there is a version for you. If you do trials, there's one for you as well. And if you're a casual and you just do normal trials occasionally, this also applies to you, and there will be a minimal difference. So, first of all, we are using a Sororia Lightning Staff. It does not have to be perfected. Perfected will give you a 1k extra max Magicka, but the regular will obviously lose 1k max Magicka. That's all it is. But you want it imprecise to make sure we've got as much crit as possible based on our setup. Increase weapon damage and spell damage on the front bar. Spell damage, minus slayer increase on all of our damage in Dungeons and Trials, and 2 max magic bonuses. Remember, you get one of those if it's the regular version, which is on normal, which you see in local chat all day long. Get stuck into them, it's really quick to get in and get out and get your stuff. But, obviously that's the difference. But when dealing direct damage to a single target ability, or with a single target ability, you will actually make fire appear under your feet. As long as I stay in there, I'll keep racking up stacks for being in combat. But I have to do direct damage to make sure this stays up. Now, this will stack up to 20 times, and each stack will give you 30 spell damage. Now, as long as you stand in the rune and do damage, you are fine. But if you leave it for more than 5 seconds, it will fall off. I'll give you a demonstration of that. There's a circle. You can see on the bottom there, my buff timers, you can see a flame circle with ticks constantly going up. There's a cooldown on it as well. It stays with me as long as I'm doing damage and in combat. But if I leave, the timer starts going down from 5, 2, 1, 0, gone. All my stacks are gone. I won't get this anymore. So I need to start again. So, in content, if you're moving around and you have to stay out of mechanics or in mechanics and all the rest of it, make sure you keep weaving in and out of this to keep refreshing the timer. Or stand still. Whichever works for whatever content you're in. You lose it, you got to start again, you lose a massive amount of damage. Now, the way that we've set this up is we'll put it on our front bar with the weapon and on our jewelry. All jewelry are bloodthirsty with 147 spell damage. So spell damage glyph on each one. The reason they're all bloodthirsty is to massively boost our execute power. We have a very, very strong execute in the form of our Jesus beam. You want to make sure you can boost it as much as possible. And it's really, really helps. But the good thing about this is if you have it on your front bar only, so our front bar weapon only, when you swap bars, you still keep the bonus. Still stays with you because this circle remembers that you casted it. It knows what you've casted no matter what bar you're on. So you proc it on the front bar, and even if you're on your back, you keep it. That's also relevant for this weapon. Our Maelstrom weapon is on the back bar. Now, this applies when our Wall of Elements goes down. And also, if you swap bars, it remembers. So, as long as you apply Wall of Elements on this bar, all of your light and heavy attacks inside of your Wall of Elements, or your blockade, will be stronger, including your off-balance heavy attacks. Now, don't be scared by the Sororia set. If you do not have access to this, first of all, you can farm it on normal, and it's relatively easy to get into those groups, or you can just host your own in local chat. So zone chat, say hosting normal cloud rest, who wants to join? It's really, really simple. People are just scared to get into them. Don't be scared. But if you can't get this, you can, of course, use War Maiden instead. War Maiden will give you a crit bonus, which we do need. We haven't got any other crit bonuses going on at the moment. We have 1k max Magicka, increased spell damage, and all of your magic abilities. Listen very carefully to this. Your magic abilities. Not abilities that are cast with your magic bar. Abilities that do magic damage, like an element. Fire is one element. Lightning, ice, and magic is a damage type. So, what have we got that can help with that? This here is magic damage. This also, our Jesus Beam, again, is magic damage. This here, our Puncture and Sweeps, is also magic damage. Now, although it will be on our front bar only, and our Blazing Spear is magic damage, and so is our Solar Barrage, all you need to do is make sure that you fire them, and then get quickly back to the front one. And while you're on the front and it's ticking damage, that will apply to those too. So basically, all of our damage abilities, except for Wall of Elements, and our light and heavy attacks, is magic damage. So if you don't have Sororia, you can get away with War Maiden, and you'll be just fine. Also consider, of course, that inside content, when you're trying to keep up Sororia, if you're one of those people that can't keep this up, or the mechanics don't permit you to do so, you will have downtime on this bonus. War Maiden, however, will be with you 100% of the time, except for when you swap bars, and then it will be back again. So in some situations, you can perform a little better with it, but the choice is yours. Now, your back bar lightning staff is essential, because that's what allows us to apply the extra off balance and minor vulnerability. If you are in a group situation where all the off balance is already covered, then of course you are more than welcome to use a flame staff with a flame glyph instead of a shock staff with a shock glyph. Has to be infused, by the way. Just consider you won't be the one supplying off balance if you do this. So you will negatively affect the overall design of the build, but you will do a little bit more damage with your wall of elements, especially if Engulfing Flames is present. But for the most part, I would stick to this because you are very, very adept at keeping up that bonus. Next up is, of course, Zahn. Now, this gives us a crit bonus, and if you do a light attack, you have like a flamethrower that comes out of your face. You have a chance to do so if you heavy or light attack, 20% chance to do so. And every 1 second that this flame breath is active, it will get 50% stronger based on the last tick. So the first one, and then the next one is 50% stronger, then the next one's 50% stronger than the last, and so on and so forth. It has a 5-second uptime and a 13-second downtime, meaning you can apply this once every 18 seconds. It's very, very strong, but your lightning staff heavy attacks make this proc very, very easily. So if we keep these up and just have a quick heavy attack in there, you can see the flame breath straight away. Only took 2 heavies to do it. Light attacks, you could be spamming them all day and waiting for it. Sometimes your first heavy attack on the rotation can apply it. It's really, really nice. Does a lot of damage. But if you don't have access to that, oh, head and shoulders, by the way, of course. Divine's on the shoulders, infuse on the head. If you don't have this, you can, of course, use Groftar. This won't give you a crit bonus, but it will give you a max magic bonus. And, of course, when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to create a big circle of lava around you for 5 seconds. And it can be reused every 5 after that. So 5 seconds up, 5 seconds down. That also, by the way, does count as area of effect. So these two are very, very close. This one will benefit from your lightning staff and also from an Engulfing Flames buff. This one will just benefit from an Engulfing Flames buff. It won't benefit from your lightning staff at all. But it does very high single target if you can get it to proc. So either one of the two, whichever is easiest for you to get to start with, and then you can obviously upgrade, or whichever one you actually prefer. They're both very, very close. Our main set, again, can be changed, but for the purpose of the build and its design, you want Auroran. This comes from Depths of Malatar. You can get this on normal and just upgrade your gear. You want infused on the big pieces, so the chest and the legs, and you want divines on everything else on the small pieces, so the belt, the hands, and the feet. Now this, what it does, is this will give you a max health bonus, which is why we've got so much health, a spell damage bonus, which is awesome, a spell penetration bonus, which is great, because now if we go fully optimized, we don't need any points in spell erosion whatsoever. And when you do damage to a nearby enemy with a single target ability, you summon a cone of lightning from your chest for 3 seconds, doing 1786 shock damage every 0.5 seconds. So you have 3 half-second ticks, and it can be reapplied every 6 seconds. So 3 seconds uptime, 3 seconds downtime. Flat out, without Minor Courage, Major Vulnerability, and Major Slayer, just flat out what we have on that target dummy over there, the big one. This can end up hitting about 3k every half a second. It's really, really powerful. Not to mention, of course, it's rapid firing shock damage, which can apply minor vulnerability, which will contribute to your off balance. And I'm going to show you how easy that is to fire. First of all, it's a 100% chance. He's got minor vulnerability already. There's your off balance on both of them. Piss easy. You don't have to sit there constantly spamming light attack this, and over. You just keep up this buff or bonus. Every single time it fires, you have a massive chance for minor vulnerability. Look at the small timer on those guys there. It's like a soldier getting an axe into his shoulder. It's on him. It's on him. Off balance. All day long. Very, very easy to apply. The build is made to be able to guarantee that stuff whenever it's ready. And all you've got to do is keep up your rotation to do so. There are other setups out there that will try and do this all day long and not succeed. This is built to do that. With that in mind, of course, that does mean that your single target damage versus some other setups will be a little bit less. Just consider, of course, these two bonuses, the minor vulnerability and the off balance, that we can keep up all the time, is something that we are supplying. And that dummy already has it. So you're not going to see an extra effect by having it on that dummy and on us at the same time. So for the dummy, I wouldn't try and change too much because it's just for the friggin' dummy. which doesn't really tell anyone anything. But like I've said already, if your group is already covering enough off balance and you really don't need the extra help, you can put a flame staff on the back bar, and of course you can change your set. You can use, instead of Aurorans, you can use False Gods, which will give you a crit bonus, a minus layer, which we've already got, so that's irrelevant. Spell damage, max magic, and of course reduces the cost of your abilities, and you get stuff back every time something dies that you kill. That is very good for sustain if you really want to, and does have extra crit bonuses. So if those buffs and bonuses are already applied, you can get a little bit more out of this, flat out, by about 3k. And always, of course, you can use Mother's Sorrow, because this you can buy off the market. You just need the body pieces. And this won't give you any flat increase as such, apart from the 1-piece max magic bonus, but it will give you high crit chance, so you'll crit more often. These two are a choice if you really want to. This one for more damage output, this one if you haven't got any sets whatsoever, and this one if you want to be the one supplying off balance all day and have the extra health. It's absolutely insane. But do bear in mind, of course, if you use any of these two, also you can use Julianus if you're crafting stuff, that's also fine. If you are using any of these two or anything else, you will have to make sure that you account for this in your champion points. So we've got 1487 spell penetration at the moment. We are slightly over, even with 0 in spell erosion. If you don't have this set, you will lose that penetrating bonus. You'll have to put 10 points into spell erosion to make up for it. Now, just bear in mind, of course, if you don't have the Maelstrom stuff, do not worry. No, you won't get your increased light and heavy attack bonuses from this because you don't have it. But you can, of course, use anything else you like. You can make a 2-piece Turok's pack for the spell damage on the back bar. You can have willpower on the back bar for increased max magic. The choice is yours. But I would highly recommend going for this as soon as you can. Remember, of course, you can use War Maidens as well if you don't have Sororite. Don't panic. There are choices. Now, I'm going to go into the champion points, and then we're going to go into the rotation, which is really simple, actually. So this is the same as everything else I have. I have a very basic standard balance set up across the board for the red trees normally, but you can change these depending on the content you're in. So 72 in Ironclad for 23% reduction to direct damage. 64 and 64 in Hardy and Elemental to balance out all damage that you take. And 51 points into Thick Skin to give us a 19% reduction to dot damage. Also, don't forget we have the Unchained passive, so if you do break free, the next stamina ability you use is going to be cheaper, by 80% cheaper, in fact. So put your Beast Trap down when you break free. 19 points into Quick Recovery to give us a 5% increase to all heals that we receive, whether they're ours or other people's. And this will give you a Field Physician passive for having 10 points in this skill tree as well, meaning that if you resurrect someone, not only do we res really fast as a Templar, but we also have a mitigation bonus for rezzing people. 44 points into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 points into Tenacity and Arcanus. This for our recovery, and this, of course, for our return on our heavy attacks. We will be using heavy attacks. I'll go over that in the rotation. 23% reduction to dodge roll. You will be dodge rolling a lot. And for having 75 points in this tree, we've taken advantage of a free bonus here, which increases the quality of items you find from treasure chests. It's not combat worthy. It's not something you really need in content. If you're going full bonuses and passives for all these beneficial things that you can get in a fight, but we're using this tree anyway, so we may as well take advantage of it. 61 points into Elfborn to increase our critical damage by 21%. 64 to increase all of our elemental damage, so flame, frost, shock, magic, all of those damage types by 13%. And 10 points into spell erosion. That, by the way, is if you do not have Aurorans on. If you do have Aurorans, take this out. Go into here, pump this up by 10 points. Then we have 47 points into Staff Expert and 23 points into Master at Arms. This will increase our staff damage, so light and heavy attacks, which we will be using a lot, especially since we empower our light attacks and especially since our off-balance heavies are high. And this will help with direct damage as well, including our light attacks and some of our other abilities as well. This is very important. 75 points into Thaumaturge, giving us a 23% increase to our damage over time. Not only is everything almost that we do area of effect, but it's also damage over time, including Aurorans. Aurorans lightning that is hitting multiple targets is area of effect. It is boosted by our lightning staff because it's area of effect damage, and it is boosted by damage over time because it's a dot. Also, for having 75 points in this tree, we gain Exploiter, which increases all of our damage done by everything that we do by 10% as long as the target is off balance. And what are we really good at doing? Making sure things go off balance. This here is easy for us with our setup and our rotation. It's almost impossible to fail. Now I'm going to go over the rotation. Really simple stuff. We've got no buffs we need to keep on, except for our resistance buff if we were to use it. So we don't have to apply anything right now. So what we do is we start with a beast trap. Now, back bar, spear, light, solar barrage, light attack, wall of elements, swap bars. Then we go light attack, purifying light, light attack, puncher and sweeps, light attack, puncher and sweeps, light attack, beast trap, swap. Now, you would be closer to the target. I'm just giving you a demonstration of what order to put things in. And that's it. Rinse, repeat. Now, what you do need to pay attention to is off balance. Because if the target is off balance, that's when you want to take advantage of your increased heavy attack damage, your double resource return, and of course, your buffs and bonuses to your splash damage as well, which is huge in AoE. So, what you do is every single 20 seconds, you're going to have a 5-second uptime on off balance. That's almost every second rotation. So every second rotation, you remove one of these with your timing, obviously, and replace it with one of these. That is it. That is all you have to do to change it. And all you're looking for, we'll do it on this target here. Look for the blue symbol. I don't know if it shows on this dummy. That symbol right there. You see that above his head? That is what you're looking for. If that's active, you need to heavy attack. If that symbol now that is active with that really obnoxious, arrogant standing dude with a countdown timer, that's the immunity you're looking for. If the immunity is running, you don't need to heavy attack, although if you do, you will get resources. But if the blue symbol is showing, that one right there, that is when your heavy attacks will really, really count. So, keep an eye on that. So to recap over that, basically, again, beast trap, swap bars. Sphere, light, solar, light, wall, swap, light, purifying, light jabs, light beast trap, swap. Spear, light, solar barrage, light, wall of elements, light, purifying, light, jab, beast trap, swap. Rinse, repeat. You keep that up every single rotation, but every second rotation, turn one of those spear stabbies into a heavy attack, and that's it. Now, I'm going to show you a demonstration on the dummy. Obviously, we do have off balance, and we do have minor vulnerability on the target. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to show you what you could use if everyone already has it covered. So I'm going to be using the flame staff on the back bar just to demonstrate it. But if you want to know the flat figures, with 2 lightning staves, you can average around 73 to 75k single target with these buffs that the dummy has. So you do drop a little bit of single target versus some other setups by about 3 to 5k, but your area of effect is bloody huge. And you're applying buffs and bonuses. If you're using a flame staff on the back bar and a lightning on the front, you still keep your AoE bonuses. You drop some of your off balance pushing potential and your damage goes slightly higher. So you're pushing around 79, 80k. But I'll show you anyway. Here we go.
I love winnings. Drinks all around. I love winnings. Drinks all around.
So, hopefully that helped. Hopefully that made some sense, I guess. There's a lot going on, but it's quite simple to apply. Basically, everything is done for you. Keep your dots up, and everything will go off balance as and when you want it to. It's really, really simple stuff. Wall down, you can't fail it. Everything's going off balance all the time. You're buffing the crap out of your group, plus supplying really decent single target and error of effect damage. So, first of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. And if you are not subscribing, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside of the channel, there are some links in the info section for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website xynodegaming.com, where all the written guides are. Don't forget also that I do live stream on Twitch every single night from 10 PM UK time onwards, unless I say otherwise on Twitter. Thank you very much again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.